Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, owner of the company Horns of Odin. And today I'm without Matthias Nordvig, but I am joined by probably the most popular guest we've ever had on this show. It's definitely a toss-up between Ed and Jonas Lorentzen. You two seem to get the most comments, likes, question, asks for you to come back and do other episodes. The growl you hear there is of what do we say? The harbinger of the guild and creator of Mythos Ragnarok, the incredible. It's not a wrestling stage show. How would you describe it?
I mean, for one thing, Dan, I would describe myself as the instigator of the guild. I feel I was clear about that when I agreed to do this podcast.
I think we said instigator or harbinger.
I think I said instigator. Actually, to be fair, I said both. I settled on instigator because I feel it's harder to define. But you're not asking about me. You're asking about the show. No, it's not a wrestling show, Dan Farrand. It's not a wrestling show at all. It's a theater piece in which I only use wrestlers. Therefore, I can show off how great they are at things that isn't just wrestling, but then they do also wrestle because that is, undeniably what they're best at because they're wrestlers. It is a theater show that is the only theater show to use wrestling for its stage combat because it is by a long way the coolest and most badass form of stage combat. And you never get to see it outside of wrestling. So I made a stage show that does it. And it's been reasonably well received. I also didn't realize it was between me and Jonas. Now I have a target. So if I take him out.
I think, have we ever done one with you two together?
Yes. Well, we did.
We did story time, I think it was.
We did one. We were both on it. And then he unfortunately had to leave partway through, which I feel was like a power move on his part.
On his part or your part?
But definitely not my part. Like it wasn't a power move on my part for him to be like, you know what, I'm done with this. You've had enough of my time.
Oh, it could be a case of you had to outlast. Like sometimes when you get two quote unquote alpha males in the steam room and they just, I do this. I'm terrible for this. I swear, I have come. I've only told one person this before. I have competitions with people in the steam room, then they don't know that I'm having a competition with them.
Is it then a competition? If only one person is competing, that's the only way you win.
Mind it is. So
I just love that your atmosphere in which alpha male competition happens is the steam room. when that was the last thing I expected to come out. When you get two alpha males in the steam room.
Okay, I was trying to think of somewhere where
I don't.
In a situation where people have to outlast each other, because that's what I do in my mind. It becomes less about
sex is what you're talking about.
It becomes less about the enjoyment of the steam room and that just sitting in there for as long as possible, even if it sucks.
You have confused steam rooms and sex. This is clear. You just said it's less about the enjoyment of the situation and more about just seeing who can outlast, even if it's just nothing but misery for the end 20 to 30 minutes, it doesn't matter. You've outlasted. That's what matters. You've proved yourself. And again, if only one person is competing, is it really a competition? In either context, sexual or otherwise.
I would say so.
Isn't this about Nordic mythology?
I mean, sometimes it is.
Not tonight, bitches.
To everybody listening, it's clear that there is 50% of the Nordic Mythology podcast missing. Matthias unfortunately had a last minute emergency, and me and Ed were debating whether to do it ourselves or delay for another day. And Ed, can you remember what the defining factor was that I asked you?
It was whether or not I had any beer.
And I had beer, and the reply was, I had beer.
Yeah.
You have beer.
I do. I do now. What are you drinking, Dan? What are you drinking?
I am drinking Brewgooder.
You're always drinking brew. I had to do an advert for Brewgooder in August. It helps if you can pronounce the people you're advertising. They did a photo shoot with me dressed as Odin.
Is this real? Or have you fucking made this up?
This is completely real. You can find it somewhere. I don't advertise it naturally. The things I have to do. I'm drinking Estrella Damm because I just got back from Barcelona, where I may have developed an Estrella Damm habit by accident. They really impose it on you. Did you get the feeling that, Matthias had an emergency? Is it possible that I was the emergency, that he realized that it was me and so he just bailed?
It was like, it's going to be too much chaos. Because who knows if there's going to be a podcast left when we're finished with this?
Well, that's true. I apologize to all the regular listeners. Although, to be fair, has anyone been on this podcast more than me? Be honest.
No, other than Jonas, who did the story types.
Him again.
He did the Patreon exclusives. But, however, let's go back to Brugada, because I want to hear you skated over playing Odin like it was nothing.
Well, look, so I have a Nordic mythology themed theatre show. And when a man writes a Nordic mythology themed theatre show, he casts himself as Odin, obviously. Like, that's what you do. It's established. I took this Nordic mythology theatre show to Edinburgh Fringe, where we were quite successful. But in the process of trying to fund and market the show, I had to do a series of quite humiliating things, one of which was attend a photo shoot for Brugada, who were trying to, what companies are like. They try and be cool by associating themselves with things that are cooler than they are. And so to convince everyone that their beer tastes good, they thought it would be effective to get some successful fringe shows to hold cans of their beer. As if I wrote my show whilst drinking Brugada and it gave like the mead of fucking poetry or something. Yeah. And so I had to do this. They then asked me if I go outside into the streets where they could do like a more urban shoot, and I just flatly refused because even I have standards, Dan, and that was too far for me. I did not want to go into the streets and be seen by the public.
Holding a Brugada.
No, I did not. Estrella Damm. I'd have been.
You'd be straight out.
Oh, yeah.
I think Brugada is actually a nice beer. So,
well,
it was all right. Did they give you any?
No, you know what? I don't think I actually drank any of it. It might be really good. No, I did. I remember I drank it because they gave me a can to hold in the group shots. And I was deeply unclear by the motivation. Dan, I'm a very serious actor. Anyone who knows me knows this. I'm a serious actor, like primarily. So they gave me this can. An actor. Yeah, but see, I should have got that right, shouldn't I? Jesus. Artiste is what I am. They gave me this can of Brugada and they said, just like hold it and we'll take pictures of you. And this was very confusing to me. Like, why would a person just be holding a closed can of beer? What's the purpose? So I cracked the can open, obviously, and drank the beer because it was the only thing that made sense in the moment. Apparently, this was not what I was meant to do, and no one else was doing it. And then I spilled some of the beer. Did you have to pay for the Brugada? Maybe they may have asked me to. I definitely didn't. I drank it. I spilled some of it on me and on some of the other acts. They didn't like that at all. The acts or Brugada. But they asked me back. They did another couple of photos. Again, I don't feel like it's. Is this what the people get? Yeah.
It's not a defining moment.
Well, no. In fact, I hadn't thought about Brugada since until I saw you drinking it. I thought I recognized that poor attempt at branding a can.
It is. I feel like this episode just becomes slating Brugada, but it is an awful can. It doesn't jump out of the shelf and go, ooh, by me.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't scream like Viking either.
Wait, is it meant to be Viking?
No, I don't think so. But they asked Odin to hold a can.
Oh, I see. No. There were other things there. They weren't trying to make the Nordic connection. There were like drag acts and a whole bunch of other. What the beer was trying to be like. We're good beer. Look, we're around artists, and that was the gimmick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they chose the wrong artist. I'll tell you that. Chose the wrong artist.
I can imagine they did. Okay, so now that you are the expert for the episode, you had a. don't scoff like that. You had a nice little moment before the show. We were talking about how it's been a tough year,
right?
And I naturally said, I can't wait for this fucking year to be over and just move on to. I like the way you cracked the can right in the middle of that as well.
I didn't. That was Mel. Look, my hands are free. Mel cracked it. My microphone's so powerful it picked you up cracking a beer and you interrupted Dan's candid moment.
It better be a brew gooder as well.
It's not. It's an Estrella Dam. She's been in my patch. Sorry, go on. Start your story. I mean,
so naturally, I said how I can't wait for the year to be over. And you said, if you want to repeat it.
Yes. I said something very insightful, which was that I pointed out that it's really interesting, at least to me, how we always refer to, I cannot wait for this year to end or this day to end, this period of time to be over, as if that holds any power, as if like the concluding of the day or the concluding of the year has any kind of like actual physical or metaphysical significance, which of course it doesn't. Like, as you so poetically said, Dan, January the 1st doesn't know. You didn't slur it like I just did. You said January the 1st doesn't know that it's the new year. Except, and this is why I think I found it interesting, was that it seemed like that it reflects something that I feel is true of mythology, which is that January the 1st isn't an interesting day. It's just yet another, day around the sun, a sun around the earth. And what the fuck was I talking about? Oh, yes. I had the panic that I'd accidentally just declared that the sun goes around the earth once every day. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Anyway, the point is that January the 1st isn't a meaningful day, yet we make it a meaningful day by treating it like it's a meaningful day. And I felt like that was a great analogy for myths, which is that the mythological stories have power because we treat them like they have power, and therefore they do. And I think it raises a question in my mind, which is that why do we treat them like they have power? Why do we treat these mythological stories differently to how we treat other stories? And I think it's because when you hear them, they kind of sing to you in this weird way where you're like, this isn't just a story. This genuinely reflects how the world is and how it is to be me in the world. And I think that's why we give extra weight and credence to certain stories and refer to them as myths, because they seem to do something relating to reality and existence that other stories don't necessarily do. I feel like you could turn on Netflix at any point and be given 1,000 stories, none of which will impact you, your life, or what you do with yourself ever again, if you even make it through the first series. Whereas certain stories carry a sort of a weird weight to them, where they actually shape who you are or who you become or your understanding of the world. And I think that's the difference with myths. And I thought that was interesting because this podcast, Dan, is about myths sometimes. Sometimes. So I thought it was really interesting that we just snuck that right in there at the beginning.
No, it is. It absolutely is, because, January 1st is no different to any other day. It's the same 24 hours. But a lot of people make New Year's resolutions, and yes, 90% of them disappear within the first week. But there will be some people who commit to eating better, losing weight, going to the gym, or any other resolution, commitment to do something. And there'll be a subset of people who stick to it, and their life from that moment changes going forwards. Right. And it's something about that day that makes them go, okay, this is a line in the sand, and I'm going to go from here now, and things are going to change. And, the day itself isn't special, but it becomes special because we put this weight on it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's, so when you asked me to come back on the podcast, and I thought, what the hell? Like, I didn't know Matthias wasn't going to be here. I normally rely on Matthias to
we both do
to know things.
Both do.
But yeah, God knows how many things we'll say on this podcast that should have been explained by volcanoes.
We'll put a disclaimer out. Yeah, we'll put a disclaimer at the start of like, there's no factual information in this one episode.
No, this is the only.
It's all just conjecture. Whatever is said here, take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, but dude, this is the Nordic Mythology podcast. Surely by default, there should be no factual information in it. Myths are not factual retellings, Dan. Otherwise, you may as well just read, a report No one wants to read it. It's like journalism, you know? I thought this the other day. I was sitting in a cafe. I was in Barcelona drinking Estrella Damm, you know, just to bring it back to why I'm drinking this particular beer. And I was drinking my coffee.
Are you being sponsored by Estrella Damm? You said it a lot.
Who? Estrella Damm? No, I've never heard of them. Wow, it's delicious though. Here's one right now for our viewers watching at home. Wow, that's a real good, interesting choice of orange red that they've used for the can. No, I'm not. Although I've now realized that it's Damm with 2 M's. It's an interesting choice. So look, I was sitting in a cafe. I wasn't actually drinking Estrella Damm at the time. That was just, you know, poetry. I was drinking a coffee. And I was drinking a coffee because I signed up for a 4-hour walking tour of Barcelona, in which they tell me about the Spanish Civil War. And when I got there, I realized I was infinitely too hungover to do this tour. So I very embarrassingly kind of backed away quite slowly and sat down at a cafe. And then when the tour moved on, I just didn't get up. And I watched some people. My holidays are great. And I was watching people walking past. And I thought, you know, if I was going to write about this moment, I felt like I could watch, you know, 100 people walk past. And if I was diligent with my note taking, I could tell you exactly what they looked like, exactly what clothes they were wearing, where they went, what they did, and what the results were of their actions. And I thought, like, that sounds to me.
This was better for your hangover than a walking tour where you had to do nothing.
Dan, you act like I had a choice. I sat down. I couldn't get back up. That was the degree of the hangover. I was like, well, I'm people watching. It was people watching.
Okay.
Which was better than being talked to about the Spanish Civil War. It was interesting, but just not what you need on a hangover. And I realized that would be like a form of kind of journalism, you know, reporting the things as they happened, the facts. And I thought, but what would that tell anyone about anything? If I did that, but I had no idea why any of the people on that street did what they did or how it felt to do what they were doing. Like, what the hell have I told anyone of meaning? Mm-hmm. Like, really, when you manage to boil human actions down to just the physics of he went there, he did this, he said that, but you have no idea why or what he was feeling at the time. Have you really reported anything of worth, or have you just kind of observed?
But I think Google would argue the opposite, and so would Facebook, because that is their whole advertising platform, is that they just they don't care though the what, whys, what, you know, for the reasons for doing things. They look at patterns of so many people search for this, they lived in this area, they also do this, and they literally just boil it down to movements and go, okay, we can predict now. And I guess it must be with some degree of accuracy that
it must be, because
this people interested in this did this, then these other people over here must also be interested in this, and let's advertise to them. So there is something to it.
Well, yeah, presumably if someone does something, there's a reason for it. So if person A does a thing, then, and if 1,000 other people do that, you can be fairly sure that someone else will do it, I imagine, and that's what their thing is based on. But if you're actually trying to, as a human being, engage, if I know that today 1,000 people went into the donut shop, right? I could probably reasonably predict that someone else will go in the donut shop fairly soon. But if I don't know why any of them went into the donut shop or what their experience of eating the donut was, then as a human being and as a storyteller, what have I really learned? What have I done other than just report the bare physics of the situation? And that, I think, is because I never stopped thinking about this sort of stuff. I thought is possibly where the difference between myths and stories starts to come to light, is that you can tell a story by simply explaining what happened, or you can do a piece of journalism by simply explaining what happened. But really, if you haven't explained why it happened, and if you haven't explained how the people felt at the time, and if when it comes to the people reading the story or watching the play, if those people aren't feeling the same thing, or if those people aren't feeling connected to it, have you really done anything of worth? Why are certain stories held up to the esteem of being myths? And like we talked about the fact that coming on the podcast today, we might talk about what myths mean in a modern context, or how you might modernize them. I thought that might be it, you know? It must relate in some way to the fact that you don't just get up and tell a story, which is like a sequence of events. You tell a story that in some way to the people listening to it tells them something about themselves and makes them, whilst in the process of listening to the story, say, yes, that is correct. That's how I feel, or that is how the world is. It reflects something bigger than just a series of facts, you know?
Yeah.
All this occurred to me, Dan, while I was drinking a coffee with a hangover in Barcelona.
I think you can also, everybody can interpret each myth in their own personal way, but and not only that, everybody will attach themselves to a different myth. Like you said earlier with Netflix, there are some TV shows that I'm gonna watch and I'm gonna get fulfillment out of, and maybe even, you know, life lessons or whatever. But the other person, or you, or, you know, anybody else, they could be into a completely different type of show, and they're going to take their lessons from that and their enjoyment from that kind of TV show. I guess the same would be for myths 1,000 years ago. Some people would have looked at one and go, okay, that relates to me in my life at this moment and everything that's going on around me. And then I'm going to take bits from that to kind of help myself feel better or improve myself, or for whatever reason. And then your next door neighbor, they have a whole different set of circumstances going on in life, and they're in a different position, and they look at one of the other ones and go, okay, this one's much more relatable.
Yeah, exactly. But I think even within like the individual myths themselves, right? You don't have to say like, I'm a Thor fishing man and I'm a Thor losing his hammer man. You know, even the creation myth, for example, you know, did anyone believe that the sky was made of Ymir's skull? I mean, I don't know, maybe not. It seems far-fetched even for, you know, sentient human beings back there to be like, yeah, the sky it's actually the skull of a giant. You're like, well, I mean, even as a man pre-science.
If you know no better.
I mean, you really have to know no better. I mean, just the relative size of the rocks that are his teeth and the entire sky.
See,
do you think they thought it was his?
I don't know. As you were kind of explaining the part about being outside in the cafe in Barcelona, I was thinking, do you think that they looked at these as myths, or they just looked at these as stories? And I think it was Simon Nygard that we spoke about this with, about the perception of kind of like reality, and for them, the gods, they didn't believe in the gods. They were just a thing. It wasn't a belief. It was it was just an acceptance of existence, and they were a thing, and that was how it was. So I wonder if that's the same with, you know, the myths. That they weren't myths. They weren't, because obviously, I guess to me and you, when somebody says the word myth, it's something that's mythological. It's not real. It's fictional. But I wouldn't. What do you think? Do you think that they would have been myths to them?
It sounds like quite a soft belief. If someone said,
I feel like we need Matthias to answer that.
God damn it, Matthias! Like, I don't know, if you teleported yourself back 1,000 years and you ask someone, do you honestly believe that the sky above you is made of the inside of the skull of a giant? You know, that's a very different type of belief to, do you believe that if you sit down at this moment that you will fall on the ground, or that a chair will be there to support you? You know, when you sit down, you have a belief that there's a chair there to sit on. Otherwise you wouldn't fucking sit down, right? That's a very solid, concrete kind of like, this is how I believe the world is, compared to, do you actually think that thing up there is made of the skull of a giant? Which I think even back then, you're going to be hard pressed to be like, yes, I as certainly as I believe this chair is here for me to sit on, I believe that's the skull of a giant. But the thing is that that's not really necessarily what it is there for. You know, we all wonder, like, where the hell did the sky come from? If someone goes, it's the head of a giant, you know, that explains it to an extent. But was that the purpose of the story? Or was the purpose of the story to let everybody know that, you know, the world was created by somebody deliberately in a way because they cared about you? They built you a world, and then they imbibe you with knowledge and strength and things. And now you feel comfortable, because being a human isn't comfortable.
But, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you're not Christian.
Well, not today.
I'm going to guess. So what's the difference with, because there are 100% Christians today that believe that God made the earth.
Right.
So I assume there are some Christians that may be like, and they kind of waver in between, but there are certainly a group who will be 100% of like, I believe that God made the earth in 7 days, and they just, that is what they believe. That's how they think that we got here. And that's, so how is that any different to maybe how they would have thought 1,000 years ago?
I guess it's not. I mean, one category of insanity is as good as another. I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna criticize them. And who am I to say that he didn't? You know, who am I to say that God, in his might, didn't build the world in 7 days, or that the sky isn't indeed the skull of Ymir? I don't know.
That kind of goes back to what we were saying about the whole New Year thing as well. Of like these things only become reality because we don't know. The truth of the matter is, no matter what you believe in, that we don't know. Like, we don't know what comes after death, and we don't really know, or for 100% certainty, like how everything got here.
No, true. You have to be like a agnostic about whether or not the sky is in fact Ymir's skull. But that's true of all things, right, Dan? Right? Surely you're an agnostic about everything. Like, you could be wrong about. You could be just playing God of War right now and not even know. So I guess agnosticism is like, you know, you have to accept that anything you say could be in a brain in a vat. But I think the thing that's interesting to me personally is that I think possibly we're just coming at the question from the wrong angle, which is people go like, did you really believe that the sky is Ymir's head? And someone might be like, well, no, but maybe, but that's not the point. Like, the story wasn't written to explain where the sky comes from. The story was written to explain that, you know, we're all part of something bigger. And it doesn't matter whether or not you believe the sky is in fact Ymir's skull. The point is that someone created the society in which you live in and will look after you and protect you. And, you know, in this case, it's Odin, and he did it by killing this giant and building a world. But like, it's more like the story is written to have a positive effect on the people around you, not actually to explain where the goddamn sky comes from or the mountains. So whether or not you believe that the sky is Ymir's skull and the mountains are his teeth or whatever is sort of secondary to, does having that story as part of your culture make you feel happy and protected and like can get on with your life, and that the giants aren't about to come across the mountains and attack you? Because that's, you know, that's useful. That's much more useful than explaining that the freaking mountains were made of Ymir's bones. Who cares? No one cares. Like, it doesn't affect anything. But knowing that in the process of that, a pantheon of gods develops who will protect you. Like, Thor is out there right now fighting those gods. That's more interesting and important, right? But that's, again, not because, do you actually believe that Thor is over there bashing giants, or just kind of paying lip service to that belief and being involved in that belief makes you feel happy and content? Exactly like believing that January the 1st is a day of importance means that you then go and lose a bunch of weight and become fitter and stronger. You don't actually believe that January the 1st is important at all. No one does. Just like, I don't actually believe Thor's over there bashing giants, but like, in being involved in the culture that's built around this belief makes me feel protected from the fact I have no idea what is over those hills. Yeah. You know, I think it's a weird way to treat mythology. Like, they have to have some kind of explanatory value or historical accuracy to be valuable, because I don't think any stories do, right? You know, seems an odd thing to hold them to.
That's a fascinating thing. And I think I spoke about this on the podcast before, that if you for most of us, we live in towns, cities, villages, and when you look up, you kind of maybe see the stars. Like, they're there, but you've got like the shimmer of urban life around you. Yeah. But that didn't exist. So, you know, back, you know, 1,000 years ago, or even if you just go out into dark spots today, you can sit and look up. And you can't help when you had this, because there is quite a glow that comes down from above, especially when the moon's out. And you can't help but just kind of look up in some childlike wonder of like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is so much bigger than I am. It's so much kind of unexplained that we don't really know what's going on up there. It's unfathomably gigantic. You just can't comprehend kind of the size of it and the magnitude of everything that's going on up there. So you can easily get lost if you really sit and think about it. Like, the size of what's out there, it can very much distract you from everything else. You kind of just sit and ponder and be like, okay, what's, you know, I have all these outside questions. Whereas if you put an explanation to it, people then have that comfort,
right?
Comfort blanket of that's what this is. So I just need to get on with farming.
yeah, farming. It probably, let's be honest, it was probably farming. Yeah, but like that's the thing, isn't it? Though, I mean, we let's agree that we have a better understanding of what the celestial bodies are now than they did back then. So we'll have an explanation. Science will give us an explanation of what they are. And does that? How much of an impact does that have on you? On like, if someone says, "What are the stars?" and you can give them a much more scientific explanation now than you could have done 1,000 years ago. Is that good? Is that helpful? Does that make anything? Would you rather be able to walk outside and look up at the stars, and when you see them, be filled with the memory of stories your grandfather told you about spirits and gods looking down at you, and the movements of human beings throughout time? All these things that just cascade into your mind. And who cares whether or not you believe it? Like, do I believe that star is my granddad? No, of course not. But, you know, it enhances my life and my experience. Or do you want to look up there and be like, it's balls of burning gas, Timon?
You know, it's such, for me right now, it's such a relatable conversation because there are things, without going too deep into things, there are things that I didn't believe that maybe now, not that I believe, I'm quite hopeful. So let's take life after death.
Right.
Like I had a very strict thought on that prior to this year.
Right.
And then now I've very much softened to that. And whether it's because my opinions have changed or it's just that I now have this want to believe that there is something or this desire because it just makes things a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the case for everybody throughout human history. These little stories probably make things that little bit easier to accept things that maybe we don't understand or we can't change, because it does. Like, that's just a fact that me thinking that the possibility of maybe there is this thing after certainly makes, you know, the last year more manageable. And that's just kind of how it is. And it's made me change my pretty strict opinions the other way. And whether it's based on science or fact or whatever, it's because it just makes coping that little bit easier. Dude, and that must be a thing for everybody.
Yeah, of course, it's a thing. This is a joyful thing, right? Is that, I mean, weird thing to take joy in, but the struggle to cope existing as a human presumably is more or less the same now as it was back then. Obviously, there are physical and pragmatic differences, like we're not farming the land or being eaten by tigers or whatever. But existentially, it's still as weird and confusing as it has always been. And if you can be surrounded by a culture that is built upon a mythology that helps you not specifically understand why the grass is green or why, you know, where the hills came from, like the practicalities of why that's the case is sort of secondary to, are you kind of filled with an appreciation and an understanding for the world that you live in and what will come afterwards? And you can take solace in fiction very easily, right? You don't have to believe that Jesus was the Son of God to think that the way he treated other people was something that you can now take into yourself. And that's for that to be the foundation of how you go about treating other people. You don't even have to believe that Jesus existed. Like, I take a lot of my inspirations about how to be a human being in the world from works of utter fiction. But I will quote Aragorn if I feel the need to, not because I think Aragorn existed and actually fought at like the Battle of Helm's Deep. I don't believe that. The point is that there is a truth to the concept and there's a truth to the character. And that's, to me, at least, much more meaningful than a lot of the real things that I experience. Like, everything I experience on a day-to-day level is real to an extent, but like, I think human beings, like, we're conceptual creatures, right? My life is more likely to be built around the concept of honor than it is to be built around any actual practical thing that you could hold or pin down. And like, honor doesn't exist. It's a concept, just like these mythological stories are concepts that are woven together. But for some reason, that is infinitely more motivating and inspiring than any piece of science that I come across. Like things that are.
I can relate to that. When the first time you ever did. Do you remember the first time you ever did the first time we ever met, when you were incredibly hungover and I gave you secondhand pizza?
Ah.
Well, that was so that was when you did the photo shoot for us. The first time we kind of ever met.
No, I remember it well. I still have those trousers.
Again, without going into details, I asked you to do the photo shoot. Mm-hmm. There was a different company who then tried to kind of buy your loyalty, persuade you to not do the shoot, and you and you very very honorably said, look, I've agreed to do this shoot. Like, if you want to do something aside from that, then maybe, but I've agreed to do this. I'm a man of my word, and that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And that's what you did.
You did. Why did I do that, Dan? There's no such thing as honor. Honor doesn't exist. You can't fucking measure it, dude. You can't put a bunch of like protons and spiral them around through a chamber and measure how hard they collide with my soul and then tell everyone how honorable I am. You can't measure it. But yet, bizarrely, honor will dictate my life just like it will yours, and has dictated millions of lives before ours, because we have this concept of what it means to be a human being. And that is, in my opinion, much more meaningful. Like when it comes to what is the purpose of a myth or a story, or, does it have to be religious? Does it have to explain the world? Like, what do you care more about? Where the mountains came from, or explaining why, when it comes down to it, I will die for this person and not for that person? Mm-hmm. Because as a human, they're the moments that actually matter. And so why even bother telling stories if you're not going to explain why I will do that? I'd much rather work out why this person chose to sacrifice themselves for this ideal than why is the sky up there? What are the stars? What are they made of? Like, those things are slightly interesting, but dear God, my day-to-day life is dictated by human beings and why they choose to do one thing over another. And it turns out most of the time that the reasons that people choose to do stuff don't fucking exist. Like, they're concepts, like January the fucking 1st. It's a concept. Yet that concept will yield 1 million people who go on to change their entire lives this year because they made a resolution, which is itself a nonsense. And I made a commitment to myself. Like, this is, I think it was like Terry Pratchett who said something like, you have to believe in the little lies so you can believe in the big ones. And that's what stories are and myths are. They're like, I don't actually believe there was a Thor and that he did all this stuff, but by kind of having a quasi belief, like acting like I believe, that kind of primes me to then actually go about living my life in accordance with very obviously non-existent things like the concept of glory and honor and trust and bravery and fairness. Because these things don't fucking, if you want to, you can just bam, snap. You know what? There's no such thing as fairness. I'm just going to be a dick to everybody. But we don't. What and why don't we? Is because we believe in like the existence of these concepts that are greater than ourselves and sort of a lot more meaningful than whether or not there's a table here, which is what physics is concerned with finding out and proving what is proving.
I think, I think luck is another good example of that. Like, luck doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Like, luck is just not a real thing.
Right.
Like, things happen, and like maybe things happen in your favor and maybe they don't. But like the concept of luck, like when people are like, oh, somebody's lucky. They're not. There's a human. Like, it doesn't exist. But equally, it kind of does exist too.
Of course it exists.
Because sometimes shit happens where like something doesn't, and like somebody will do something and it's lucky, but they will repeatedly do it, and they just they're on like a lucky streak, and it does appear. But when you look at it in its very basic kind of objective form, luck is not a real thing. It just doesn't exist. It's just a word we've given for when something favorable happens to somebody. Yeah.
And favorable by our own definitions or their own. You know what? I'm glad you said that, because it's just something I'm really interested in. So there might be someone out there who can point me in the right direction. Because I've been looking a bit recently at things like luck and fate and how it is, like you say, some people are just lucky. They're like, there's a series of like consistently things work out in their favor, or the other way around.
I know some people who are fucking assholes, but everything always just drops right for them.
Right. But then also, like, there's a concept that, you know, if you're lucky, that means you're both lucky in a positive and a negative sense. People who have the greatest positive luck will also sometimes have the worst possible luck as well. And why is that? And I've been trying to read around this a little bit, and like measurable, practical, measurable karma. Like, I think there's a thing about lucky people. And I think it's an observational thing, because I was having this exact conversation with Mel, my girlfriend, when I was on the train to the airport to get a plane to Barcelona. And now what happened? Somebody said something quite specific about me. I do remember, but not within the scope of this podcast. That's how small my brain is these days. But the point is,
we were doing so well up until that point. We just had a good 20 minutes of actually sounding like we knew what the fuck we were doing.
Yeah, we were believable almost. Well, like it doesn't have to stop. I believe in us. Look, so I started to explain that if someone calls me lucky, for example, I just don't think that's, well, I mean, obviously it's true by definition. But there's a reason why. So people say things seem to just work out well for you. And the weird thing is, I think they work out well because I never make a plan ever. I just do things. And because of that, I have to be in a constant and perpetual state of open-mindedness. I have to look for every possible alternative. People say, how are you going to get to the airport? I'm like, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I haven't planned. So I go to the train station, and lo and behold, there's a train that goes to the airport. They're like, oh, that's lucky. It's not lucky. That train was there all along. Like, it only feels lucky because I didn't know that going into it, right? But when I arrived there, I was like, oh, if I go to that platform within the next 2 minutes, I'll get a train. But that only happens because I don't know what I'm doing when I turn up. I didn't turn up 3 hours early and sit around waiting for my train. I turned up in the moment and found the right solution. So I think the reason...
For every time you get there and there's a train coming, there are 10 people who get there and go, oh, fuck, I've got to wait 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Or there are another 600 people who know their train's at 10 o'clock. So they arrived at 9:45. Now they're waiting. Whereas when I rock up at 9:59 and I step onto the train, people are like, "Boy, you're lucky." Like, wait, I'm not lucky. I turned up and responded to the situation as it was, which means I think I cultivate an ability to see opportunities where other people don't see them because they're too busy carrying out the plan they already made. And I look around of people
rather than living in the moment and just kind of reacting to life.
Yeah, but that's a practice skill. If you're the type of person who makes a plan for every day and knows where they're going to be, the moment that goes, you panic and you're not used to being like open to situations as they occur. You don't make decisions like that. Whereas if you're someone like me who's utterly fucking useless, and so you go about life kind of ping-balling around the place, you become very good at spotting when things are going to line up in your favor. And so you can jump on them. And also like the being willing to jump on them, to be like, I'm not totally sure where this train is going, but I'm going to jump on it because I have no other options. And lo and behold, it's going in the right direction. Like that would never have happened, right? If I'd have had an actual plan. So, I mean, I'm talking about myself, but this applies to all kinds of people, is I feel like lucky people, they're lucky because they've chosen not to plan things ahead. They've chosen not to make a strategy and rather to kind of trust that they're going to make it themselves one way or the other. And it's like a weird confidence thing. And I feel like maybe that's why especially lucky people give off a certain vibe about them. There's a certain spark to them because they're very much alive in this moment. Because if they're not, they will probably die because they have not thought about what they're going to eat or where they're going to go or where they're going to sleep, because they sort of have a faith that they will be fine. Because why wouldn't they? They've developed the capacity to just kind of get by day to day by winging it. And if you're good at that, damn, God,
there'll always be, it's always something. There's always something. You'll be all right. I also think that a lot of time people use luck, particularly in like modern days, like use luck to explain other people's success. So to get it back onto you and your show, how many sold out days did you do at the Fringe?
Oh, damn. 16. I did 26 shows, 16 were sellouts.
Okay. So how many days back to back? Or how many days?
26. I did 26 days back to back, 17 sellouts, and I think 12 of those sellouts were back to back. Okay.
So 26 days at the Edinburgh Fringe is fucking remarkable. That's a success story, by anybody. But there will be a certain group of people who go, that's lucky to land in that, or lucky to get that position. And usually it comes from a position of kind of like the green-eyed monster or whatever. But like there are certain people that will look and go, you were lucky, but because they will maybe stumble upon you 3 months ago, and they'll look at your Instagram, look at the things you're doing, and be like, "Fuck, this is great! How lucky it is to get the fringe." But they haven't seen the 2-3 years of building this and growing it and fucking putting everything into it. And it's the same thing with like you see of influencers, whether it's fitness models or whatever. People are like, oh, it's lucky to just be pretty and be able to take pictures on Instagram and have like 1 million followers. But it's not that simple. You know, you know more than anyone, it's not that easy to just maintain being in really good shape constantly. It takes a lot of work. People don't see that. People just see a pretty face on Instagram and go, "I must be. You must be so lucky to just be pretty and be able to take pictures."
Right? Yeah.
They neglect the work that goes behind that because they don't see it.
Yeah. Well, I think when people talk about luck, they talk about how fortunate that this situation turned up. You know, how lucky you were that this thing became available. And I mean, if you look at that situation in isolation, it seems unlikely. So it does seem, lucky that it came up. But when you realize that there's 3 years of work beforehand that going
you have to put yourself in that position.
Yeah. Going specifically to making sure that those things happen on a regular basis, because that's how it works, If you're not in,
if you don't do all the hard work to get yourself in the position to then receive whatever favorable opportunity comes your way, then it means fuck all. You have to do the hard work to get yourself to the playing field.
Yeah, you have to do the due diligence to make sure when the opportunity comes up, you can take it. Those same opportunities, like that train situation, that fucking 10 o'clock train was going to be there for everybody. But if you weren't at the station at that time, you wouldn't have been able to get the train. So what happened beforehand was either one of two things. You either looked ahead, you realized there was a train at 10 o'clock, so you got yourself there to do it, which is like the practical kind of or you do the lucky approach, which is that you rock up to the station, you realize that there's a train leaving in 10 seconds over there, and then you fucking run as fast as you can. You jump over 3 things, you dodge a camel, you leap into the train. Everyone's like, "Wow, it's lucky you got there." You're like, "Well, it is, but also I spent years of my life being capable to dodge camels and run at that speed to get that train." Like there's a load of things that mean that 12 of us turned up at the station at 9:59 and 50 seconds. Only one of us got on the train, not because he was lucky, but because he spent the rest of his life developing the ability to respond to any given situation and take advantage of it. And it's the same with the show, right? Like one of the good things about my show is we're wrestlers, which means we're not used to being treated well. And what that means is we have a really low bar for what we expect. So people are like, "Wow, got really lucky that venue was available." You're like, did we get lucky, or did we also just have to set up our show in 10 minutes flat before every show? No other show would have done that, but we were willing to do that. So people will be like, "Oh yeah, how lucky that such a venue came up at the last minute." We're like, no, it was there. Anyone could have taken it. No one else was willing or capable of taking it.
Yeah.
So the reason we were lucky was because we cultivated the ability to take advantage of situations other people can't take advantage of. That's not luck. That's fucking hard work. Now, obviously, there's always going to be an element that's out to the fates that something comes up or someone notices you, but you need to be there to be noticed as well. Just like you said about Instagram models and so on. Oh, how lucky to be beautiful and just some photographer comes and takes pictures. But if they hadn't put some work into being seen, then no one would be there to see them and take pictures of them. Like everyone has to fucking work sooner or later, sadly.
So at some point. Okay. 26 days. What have you learned? Because when we last spoke, you just done the first show. I came down and watched it. It was we sang the praises. It was amazing. It really was. It was the most fun I'd had in a long time.
Yeah, I remember.
So, you must have learned and ironed out some kinks over the 26 days. That can't be easy.
Oh yeah. So we did 32 shows that year. So you saw the first one. We've done 32 since then. So it's different. It's very, very different now. The show you saw was 2 hours long. Fringe only gave us 70 minutes at max.
Okay.
So we had to cut things out. We had to speed things up. We had to change things up. And most of that has been an improvement because it's made me take a real hard look at what things can I get rid of and with what things need to be in here. So we cut it right down to 70 minutes for Fringe. And now that we're not doing that anymore, I now can put all the stuff in that I cut out, but I've learned how much of that needs to go back in and how much the show works without. So it's a very lean show now. I mean, there was never a lot of fluff in it in the first place, but now it's really, it's mean and it's lean, and we know our beats. Yeah. It's a lot more professional than it was back then, because when you saw it, it was an idea I had that someone accidentally said yes to. And I was like, well, got to do this now. So
sometimes that's the best thing though, when you put an idea out there and then somebody, jumps on it and you're like, oh shit, I'm fucking committed to this now.
Yeah. But Dan, how lucky that someone said yes to it and that this venue came up. Not how lucky that you spent a lifetime writing things and studying the mythology, that when someone said you can put a play on if you can write it in 3 weeks' time, it's not a luck. I mean, the opportunity is fortunate, but being able to capitalize on it was because I'd done a lot of work to get to that point. But it's very different now. It's very exciting. Now, I mean, I was excited about it in the first place, but now, I mean, it is there's no room to breathe in the current show for us or the audience, man. It is full on.
I can't wait to see again.
Well,
I can't wait.
How fortunate you say that, Dan, because I have a
bit to it. Fucking 130 episodes. I know how to segue by now.
Nice. I noticed. You know how I noticed? Your beer changed color. It went from a brew got bad branding through a red one, and then it turned to a green IPA. Was it in Australia?
Okay.
For real? You were drinking a red beer. What was it? You don't even know.
Vocation.
Vocation. Man. But it changed to a green IPA.
Blue Silent.
So, yeah, that's the classic symbol for go. When the beer changes from red to green.
I did go from red to green, to be fair. Yeah.
I know. I'm filling the audience in, who can only hear with their ears instead of watching with their eyes.
Terrible subliminal messages for a podcast, but
yeah. When I change my beer from red to green, sell your product.
Go.
Okay, so
we'd have got away with it as well if you hadn't have opened your mouth.
Yeah, but I'm a man of the people, Dan. I will not pull the wool over their eyes.
A man of honor.
Yeah, occasionally. So my show is back in the new year, and our very first date will be our first ever date in the north of England. And it will be at none other than Jorvik Viking Festival, which is a festival that's incredibly close to both of our hearts. And we've gone up there and done all kinds of mischief over the years. And in some incredible turn of events, I've managed to secure the York Barbican, which is by a factor of 10 times the biggest venue that I've ever done. Fringe on average, we were doing 140 people. York Barbican seats maybe 1,500. It will be the biggest show Mythos has ever done. I have not the foggiest idea how we're going to do it. But they're game, we're game, and we've teamed up with Jorvik Viking Festival to try and put on something that's never been done before, to try and to reinvigorate mythology, the Norse mythology that we all love so much, but to put it into a context that is even more enjoyable for modern audiences. And fortunately for me, that very luckily for me, it so happens that I did that 32 times last year. So when the opportunity came to do it at Jorvik, I could jump on it. So the tickets went on sale at 10 a.m. today. So they are currently available to buy. I've not told anybody apart from you and 2 other people. And obviously the people in the show, because otherwise there won't be one.
Oh, let me know so we can share it on all our platforms. Obviously, I'm going to share on Horns of Odin as well.
I'm letting you know now, Dan.
No,
consider yourself warned.
Okay.
Consider my beer turned from red to green.
This is where you're going wrong. You can't just say that to me. I need a link or somewhere I can send people.
I don't have that. What do you think I am? The internet? No, you know what? I've matured since our last podcast. I have a link. I'll be posting it on not on my social media, I'll be posting it on the mythos.theatre Instagram account, which is an account I had to build because I did nothing but post about Instagram for an entire year, and it took over my entire life and my own career. So I've made its own little Instagram account, mythos.theatre, where you can get all the dates and the ticket links. So I'll be putting it there.
Put it on yours as well.
I mean, obviously,
put it everywhere.
Put it everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Everyone, because everyone's going to share it as well. You know.
Well,
you're going to have the backing of everybody.
On this occasion, yes. I mean, you and I have been going to Jorvik for fucking years, and you know, it'll be cool that there'll be an event there that we have created, like from our community. We go there a lot and we hang out. We have an awesome time. We all enjoy it at Jorvik, but very rarely do I feel like we're doing anything that we have created. We're watching other people do stuff and stuff from a community that we're not necessarily involved in. Whereas there's thousands of us there.
That's what I think they've been missing as well. And, you know, I think Jorvik's taken a little bit of a decline in the last few years. I think, certainly, COVID certainly hasn't helped.
Well, that did him in, didn't it?
And then, but it's still, like you said, it's such a special place for so many people within this community. But it's always kind of felt, like you said, not like we're on the outside, but there's just been like that missing link between what they put on and the community as a whole.
Yes.
And I think that hopefully you're gonna bridge that. And then, you know, I'd always want to be involved with the festival. It's the first place I ever traded at. It was the place that I bought the first horn that made me start Horns of Odin. So it has a very special place in my heart, regardless. So I would always support it as a festival. I just think that link, that kind of missing links, not being there, and I'm glad to see that they're making that. They're kind of taking a chance with what you're doing, and hopefully that's going to bring this community into it.
I hope so, and they are. Like I've talked to them a fair bit in the organization of this, and they seem to really be looking for opportunities to engage with this community and give us a way of doing something, which I understand they've been hesitant to do before because, as we know, they've had some unfortunate associations in recent history. And it's really great that they found a way to. I think it's true, though, right?
It is true. It also links back to the fucking photo shoot. Let's not.
Yeah, man. Honor.
You know,
that's what I'm talking about.
I haven't drank enough to put myself in that much trouble yet.
Don't do that. Don't do that. No one needs that. We don't need to get in trouble because this is not. This isn't a negative. This is nothing but positive vibes from this situation. No. Is like they understand that there's a community out there that they haven't yet engaged with in a way that like we're there every year. We go there on the same dates.
when you get burnt, when you do.
Oh my God!
When you do take that chance, then you get burnt. Then you're extra cautious going forwards.
Yeah.
You know, it's the whole fool me once, fool me twice thing. They have to be kind of extra tentative and don't know who to trust then.
Yeah, man. But fortunately with me, like pretty much what you see is what you get. Like I'm going to go up there. I told them we'd get a big old venue involved, and we did. Like it doesn't get bigger than the Barbican up there. So Barbican involved, like I've done it all myself. Well, I say I've done it myself. I've had help, obviously. Stupid thing to say. But what I mean is we have built it, and now Jorvik have seen that like we put our money where our mouths are. And so they're willing to support it because they see that this isn't a flash in the pan, and we're not trying to earn money off of them. Like this is a festival that has meant an awful lot to me and an awful lot to you and all kinds of people from our community. Yet we've never been represented at it. You know, we turn up and we watch other people do it, people that we don't necessarily know. And it's always felt weird that for a festival and for a celebration of something that we are passionate about, that our role is to sit in a pub and drink and then go out and watch other people. So yeah, I'm super amped that this will be hopefully a starting point that we can prove that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, man. Well,
because obviously music is a big part of it. Have you thought about maybe trying to put on a live band?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Play alongside, because that would be fucking fantastic.
Yeah. That's where I want the show to go anyway. I want the music to be as live as the acting. Like we're technically, oh Jesus, dude, it's so boring, but like we're a variety show, which means that I pay like royalties out to the artists whose music I use in the show on a particular rate, depending on how much of my show, what percentage of my show is music, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, okay.
It's long and it's tedious, but my end goal would always be to actually have musicians there live. But my show is already fantastically expensive to run because there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of stuff and moving parts. It doesn't make any money, but that's not what it's for. It's for the purpose of keeping these stories alive and adapting them for modern audiences and all the stuff we've talked about, tonight about myths aren't useful if they don't speak to you. They're just stories then. They're just nonsense Netflix bullshit that no one cares about.
Sometimes you have to invest in yourself as well for the future. Like,
yeah, man,
it might not make money right now, but eventually there's going to be doors that open up where you can,
and everyone will say how lucky we are.
No. Brew gonna come knocking at the door. You do a little modeling.
Estrella Dam come knocking.
If you hadn't been to the Fringe, Brew wouldn't have been there, would there?
Yeah, exactly. And look where that's got me. That Brewdogger contract. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. Well, no, thank you for talking about the show. It means a lot, and yeah, I can't wait to.
No, I will support you with whatever venture you do, because I know that you put everything into it. Like I said, being at the first show, seeing the effort that not just you but the whole cast put into it, of just the belief. And there was I said to you at the time, and I probably said on the last podcast we did, that people performed on that level because they believed in you. It wasn't about the story. It wasn't about where they were, the audience, anything like that. Everybody that kind of took part, the actors, the wrestlers, it was all because they had this love and belief in you and what you were creating and what this could become. And that's what you've built through your honor code, your whatever system you live by, of being kind to other people and doing as you say. Then people, that's reciprocated, and it might not be reciprocated at, right in the moment, but I will never forget the fact that, when I asked you to do something and you agreed and this other offer came, you were like, no, I'm going to do this. And I will never forget that, because that meant a lot to me in that time when I needed it. It meant a great deal. Okay. So then I reciprocate that back wherever I can, because you grow kind of these loyalties through that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like my show has got where it's got because of the efforts of the people around me. And if those efforts are in part inspired because those people believe in me, or, whatever I've done up until this point, then even better. But I mean, all of it comes down to the same wonderful human situation, right? Which is that if people believe in me because I've been kind to them or I've been loyal to them, those are non-existent nonsense concepts, right? In the eyes of science or whatever it was. I'm not digging at science, obviously. I'm just getting at the fact that those things don't exist in the same meaningful way as facts do. And yet everything that we do as humans is motivated by them. And I'm here because of them. You're here because of them. My show's here because of them. Yet you can't measure them and you can't document them. And that to me is what mythology is, and why I chose to make my show about it, and why I would come on here and without any plan and just a small collection of Estrella Dam delicious Spanish beer that I'm not sponsored by, would happily feel like you and I can just shoot the shit for an hour. Because
that's without doubt. When Mateus messaged and said he couldn't make it, there was no. I sent messages out to the patrons, to our Discord, and I'm like, would you, should we postpone it, or would you like to just see us do it? But there was no doubt in my mind that we could just sit and have a beer and just talk about whatever, and it doesn't matter where this gets kind of pointed. We'd be all right.
Yeah, we'd be all right. And if we ruin the Nordic Mythology podcast, in 1
I think
hour,
we'd be well behaved.
I think we've been very good. I've been Desperate for
The chat. We'll wrap up in a second. The chat was complaining that there wasn't enough dick jokes and it wasn't enough volcanoes.
Well, I feel like there, Matthias is, certainly the volcanoes are his. He literally wrote the book on volcanoes.
Mm-hmm.
But dick jokes, I mean, I feel like I've let everyone down there. I apologize.
We got too serious. We got wrapped up in a serious conversation.
I didn't. You know what? I did not see that coming.
Neither did I.
But you see, if we had prepared for this, probably we wouldn't. It wouldn't have actually worked out because we'd have tried to.
No, it would have been all dick jokes.
It would have been terrible. Yeah, it'd been mainly dick jokes and very little, pseudo-serious discourse about mythology and human phenomenology. But you know what? We'll listen back to this in a couple of days. We'll be mortified.
No, I think we've done all right.
I've had such a good time. I've had such a good time. It's just lovely to talk to you, man. Thank you.
You too. It always is. You know you're welcome anytime.
I can't believe you're still staying that 5 episodes in. It's bold.
Of course, you are. Everybody loves it when you're on. They know it's going to be chaotic. They know it's going to be hilarious. Except today,
nothing chaotic. Yeah, this was very subdued. It's probably because I'm exhausted from all the show stuff. Yeah. But
no. We will. Let's do this again before the York. No, should we do it before or after? What do you think?
Do it there. Let's do a live podcast from York.
Oh yes, let's. There we go.
You heard it here first.
Let's do that, and we'll have all the beer.
Yes, hell yes.
All this
after the show. Good Lord, otherwise I'll kill somebody.
Yeah.
No. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let people know where they can buy tickets.
Yes. You can follow me at Thus the Guild on Instagram. You can follow the show at mythos.theatre. You can get tickets at the York Barbican. It is 1,000+ seats, so I don't think you'll struggle, but there are only so many ringside seats, which is where you're up so close that I'll spit on you as I'm doing my dialogue. So if you don't get those, you'll be further back. So I highly recommend you sort that out soon.
Or just if you don't like what they're wearing.
Yeah, mainly that. But that's when I just throw shit at them like a monkey. That's what Odin does. But you can find them there. Follow the Instagram account, please, because I will be announcing the rest of our tour there. So, yeah. Thanks, man.
Perfect. If you enjoy the show, please take a minute to leave us a 5-star rating, positive review wherever you get your podcasts. If you can, please support us on Patreon. You get to watch the episodes live. You get to join in the chat. It's always a lot of fun in there. Sometimes I get distracted reading the chat whilst we're mid-episode, which isn't the best. But it's always a lot of fun. We have a lot of good followers. You get those when you support us at any level. You can watch live. You also get early access to all the episodes. And obviously just follow us on Nordic Mythology Podcast, whether it's Facebook, Instagram. The website, nordicmythologypodcast.com, you can pick up some t-shirts. We're working on some new merchandise at the moment, which, we've got some big things in the works, and we're kind of looking forward to and pushing forwards after this tumultuous year. We've been a little all over with myself and then Matthias having baby Björn. We've a little up and down, but hopefully things are going to align back and we're pushing forwards. And I have ordered the coconut bikini as well. So that is coming either when it arrives, whether it comes and it's going to be next week or the week after. So if you want to watch that live or see that before anyone else, obviously, again, head over to the Patreon and you can support us there. And it helps us out and helps us keep running the job as well, I guess. So thank you very much. Take care, and we appreciate you joining us.